And my daughter came back to live with me when she was about 16, and she got pregnant, and I got to be there and tell her that I'd be there for her no matter what she decided. And she ended up marrying the guy, my grandson's father, and I got to be there at the birth of my first grandson. And my second grandson now, he's 10 years old, so I've got two now, 10 and 16 years old. And I got to sit with them a couple of years ago and watch their mom graduate from Cal Poly Pomona with a bachelor's degree, and she's going to be a probation officer. Well, now she's working on her master's. She wants to be a social worker now and put families back together, which is perfectly understandable to me. And over time, it took a long time for me to learn how to take my hands off of her. I came in here being as bad a parent as I'd ever had. I came in here, I thought that the way to control her was to hit her, and I had to tell that secret to you too. And you didn't kick me out. You said, come in here and do this different. And you showed me how. And my dad doesn't have to sit up nights anymore watching the news to make sure his daughter's name isn't on the list of the victims of the serial killers of the day. You know, he sleeps well and he knows why. And he has said to me before that it took a while for him not to have to tell that story. That's a real true story where he had to watch the news. And he used to have to tell me about it. And, you know, after about 5 years of that stuff, it gets a little old. You know, you think, I sit there and bite my lip. And after 12 years, it was really old. And we were having lunch. We were having lunch at this Italian restaurant one time. And for, I don't know, whatever it was, Father's Day or something. And he started to go into this. You know, I have no pictures of you when you were a teenager. And I'm thinking, okay, here we go. Here we go. And I'm smiling. And, you know, just trying to ride through. Now at least I know sit through it, because you don't know how this is going to go. But, God, I didn't want to. I was sure I knew how it was going to turn out. And thought, I've got a sharp object here. Maybe I'm due for a stabbing. I don't know. But he finished this. He said, but I wouldn't trade who you are for all the pictures in the world. See, if I'd stabbed him, I would have missed it. And we've gotten closer and closer over the years, and he loves Doug, and my family loves Doug. And that's another encouraging thing, you know. When he met Doug, he didn't have to say, what's that? Because a few of the guys I'd met before, it was like, what is that? My mom was the hardest. It was hardest for me to stay off her side of the street. I don't know why I did those inventories, and it was just, you know, it would crop back up, and things would crop back up, and my selfishness and my fear of who I thought she was going to be, and all of those things would crop up. And about 2 years before I got sober, my baby sister committed suicide at the age of 17, and it took her all weekend to die. And while she lay laying on life support in the hospital out there, I'd leave the waiting room where the family was, and I'd go out to the van in the parking lot, and I'd drink, and I'd go back into the waiting room, and I'd just rake my mother across the coals. And I'd talk to her in a way a daughter should never talk to her mother, especially when her baby lay dying in the next room. And I don't know how you make amends for that, except that I started by calling her once a week and trying to find out how I might add to her life instead of take. And that was simple enough direction for me. It required a lot of listening. And sometimes it required listening with my eyes rolling back in my head, because I didn't understand her. I didn't know why she was the way she was. I didn't realize what was going on. She'd been taking these heavy-duty prescription pills since I was 10 years old, and when she stopped drinking, it was just almost seamless for her, because she had things like OxyContin and Vicodin and the rest of the stuff. And I didn't know why she couldn't hear me and why she couldn't be present. And it would always tick me off a little bit, but I had to come in here, and it wasn't about her, what she was doing to me, and so I always had to come back in and try to listen and try to find out. And over time, we became very close, and I loved that experience. I loved being able to see the glimpses of my mom that I could. And about 10 years ago, my baby brother died of this disease. He was 6'10", 160 pounds, 30 years old when he lay on life support in a Spokane hospital. Little pinholes in his heart from doing crank, and he wasn't going to stop drinking. And mercifully, when he died, I got to go and be the kind of a daughter my mother needed while she buried a second child. And I don't know what kind of pain that is for a parent, but I know that this time, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I got to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. Over time, I don't know if you've ever gotten into this, but Howard alluded to a little bit. You know, there's meditations of sorts, and I've always been a mover. I've told you that. I have to get my body out of the way first, and whether it's in the gym or rollerblading or trying to surf or whatever that is. And I had to quit surfing because I was getting hurt. You know, my friend Lisa described surfing as like being in a domestically violent relationship without actually having to have a boyfriend. And that's true for me. So I'm looking for something new to do, and in the meantime, you know, I don't know, I'm restless, irritable, and discontent a little bit. I'm looking for the next thing to do. I've gotten into this perfectionistic thing. I'm not having any fun, really, you know, and my sponsees don't want to call me anymore because she's just like, you know, if I could hit you over the head with a hammer with the truth, that's what I was doing, you know. It just... they were like, I don't want to call her, you call her. I didn't know. And they didn't leave because they love me, but it was like, and you know, just tight. You just don't know how tight you're getting, right? It just kind of creeps up. And I didn't know how. So anyway, I end up, you know, I know that there's a God today. I know I'm a little scattered today. Sometimes, you know, a spiritual awakening feels a lot like a nervous breakdown, right? So I'm having one of those this weekend, so it's all good. I didn't know how tight I'd gotten until I wandered into a Arthur Murray dance studio. And you know, I know that there's a God today too, because he answers questions I don't ask out loud. I don't always even know they need asking. But I go into this dance studio and I get a free rumba lesson. And I, you know, you got to get a little wiggle on to do the rumba. You really do. And so I'm about halfway through this rumba lesson with my teacher, and finally, you know, he's had enough, and he stops and he says, "Oh, Carla, do not try to dance like a good girl. I don't think they will believe you anyway." So I'm 47 years old and 17 years sober at the time, and our book says in the 9th chapter that in God's hands our dark past is our greatest possession. And I've turned it over and put it in God's hands, and I take it back and put it in, and we can argue about how that goes all the time, but you know, there are things that I want to give him all the way and things I don't, and so I learned to dance. I began to learn to dance, and that's how I was reminded of staying in the now, and now being the very best place I could be. I learned that when I'm being led in dancing, if I'm doing a beautiful waltz or a foxtrot or a salsa, whatever it is I'm doing, if I allow myself to be led, if I don't worry about the step I just took, and I don't worry about the step I'm about to take, and I just allow myself to be led, I never know what pattern I'm executing until we're done. And I'm looking back at it as a beautiful dance, and I've had a great experience doing it. And that began to send me back into that window that Howard talks about. And dancing became, I'm not saying dancing is the answer, I'm just saying it was one of those windows that I was given to find that out. And sometimes they're temporary, sometimes they last a lifetime. But my friend Don N., who's in my home group, not the baseball player, but the other one, he said, "I was real afraid when you started that dancing thing. I was real afraid of that because... he said, I thought you'd love dancing so much you'd leave AA. And you know how we get all excited about something. And he said, but I see now today that what had to happen was that little girl who went to North Beach had to step aside so that the lady who dances could come out. And it's really true. You know, I got some old timers walking in front of me that I look at their examples, those living videos of how I can be and how it can be for me. And I got those people walking behind me who remind me of what it was like when they were new, and they set me right back. And humility is certainly a thing that I seek today because I want to. It's not always a success, though. And I know there's a God because he answers questions I don't ask out loud, and I just got to keep letting him get bigger in my life. I want to thank you again for having me, and I want to thank my loving husband again. Like I said, we've been 2 months into this marriage, and so far so good. And if I can keep myself out of the way, you know, we both of us like to do this, and I've had a little trouble with my ego lately. You know, sometimes we'll go, and if the both of us come, we're all good. But when I go and I'm Mrs. Doug instead of, you know, Carla, you know, it's like. Well, I don't want to be, I'm afraid I'm going to be buried underneath this relationship. And they'll say, boy, you look so happy these days, you know, and I'll say, but I was happy before. Don't get carried away. You never know what's going to come around. You know, Billy S. always says that God sees around corners, and you know, thank you for bringing me to this one. Thanks for letting me share.